We went to go on a drug deal, and a man lost his life. And I struggle with that every day because it's God's creation.
You're listening to the God Behind Bars podcast, where we take you behind prison walls to hear about the ways God is moving in the incarcerated population. God Behind Bars is a ministry that exists to introduce inmates and their families to Jesus and connect them to the local church. And we do that through a variety of programs all across the United States. This podcast was created to give you a glimpse of what life is like behind bars, first-hand testimonies of Jesus radically transforming lives, and why we believe God belongs in prison.
Revelation says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, and that's been my story,
Yeah. Well, speaking of your story, Anthony, just maybe go back to as far as you can remember and just give me as much as your testimony that you feel comfortable sharing.
Of course. Growing up, my dad was in the Pentecostal church. He's been a preacher my whole life. Whenever I was about 11, 12 years old, we moved out to the country because me and my brother were having some problems in the city life. We grew up in Fort Worth. We were having problems in the city, and so they moved us out to the country. When we moved out there, we kind of backslid a little bit. We quit going to church. My dad ended up getting into the oil field, and I got introduced to a life that I didn't know. Got involved with people who were doing drugs, drinking a lot of alcohol. I started sneaking out, stealing my mom's car early in life, going down a long road that I shouldn't have been going down. And whenever I was 17, my mom made my dad start go back to church. And when that happened, I had my girlfriend living at home with me and stuff like that. And my dad was, we're not going to do this in our house. We're going to serve the Lord, and all this other things of the world, it's got to leave, And I wasn't in the place to where I could forsake all that and turn back to God, because from 11 to 17, that's impressionable years in a young man's life. And so everything that I learned up in those moments is what I knew.
Yeah.
And so turning back, to God away from everything, it was impossible at the time. Whenever I left home, I wasn't forced out. I made the decision to leave. Whenever I did, the road got darker and darker, ended up getting involved with women, and that became an obsession for me. I had 2 children, one I didn't even know about really until recently. But anyhow, I ended up in prison for assault on a public servant, and got a 2-year sentence whenever I was 21 years old. I turned 21 in prison. And, I would go to church and things like that, but nothing ever stuck. Nothing ever would stick. I would find myself going right back to the same way of life, of smoking weed, drinking, and things of that nature. And I made it out for about 15 months. And whenever I was 23, I ended up being in a place I should have never been, doing the things I should have never have done, addicted to drugs, got addicted to methamphetamines, and I was in a bad relationship, and we went to go on a drug deal, and a man lost his life, and I struggle with that every day because, that's God's creation, And so I end up in county jail, capital murder, $1 million bail, no way out, no ticket out. They refused to reduce my bond, and so they immediately put me in segregation, because I was a high-profile case all over the news. And being stuck in that cell, man, it was driving me crazy because I didn't know what my life looked like from that point on. I didn't know what to expect. And I turned, instead of turning to God, I turned to the things that jail and prison have to offer, which is gangs and drugs and things like that. And my mom's a prayer warrior. So she prayed on her face faithfully every day that I was in jail. And God was faithful and ended up giving me a 40-year sentence for a lesser plea of first-degree murder instead of capital. And I accepted it, Anything was better than, sitting on death row or life in prison. Mm-hmm. And I ended up coming down here and I degressed, from the whole time I was down here, I degressed. And every time I got to a bottom in my life, it's like the bottom of that pit just gave in and I went even further down. And I remember one time I'm over here, I'm sitting on F-Pod, and I got a weapons case, and my son found out about it, and he tells me, Dad, you can't continue to tell me how to live my life and stay out of trouble if you're going to be in there doing the exact opposite. I'm not going to listen. And that did something to me. It rocked me to the core. And in that moment, Jesus started ministering to my heart, and he started speaking life into me, but I didn't know what was happening. And because I was just my conscience was seared with a hot iron, all them years of just running away from the light to the dark. And I remember I was 30 years old, man. I told my son I was going to clean my life up. I was going to step away from the organization I was a part of. I was going to do right, get out of prison and come home to him, first chance I got. And I woke up, it was April 2022, man. I was 30 years old. And I looked into the mirror, and the person that I seen, I didn't even recognize, didn't even recognize who he was. I lost myself down here. And I could hear the whisper of God inside my spirit, and he asked me 3 questions that I had to study how to answer, Mm-hmm. And he said, how much longer are you going to continue in your mess? How much further are you going to run from me? When are you going to give me the chance to pick you up and place you on solid ground? And I've never had an encounter like that ever in my life. And I knew it was so profound that I couldn't run from it. And it was like a veil was removed from my eyes, and I could see my life from as far back as I can remember up until that present point. And every situation where I was good as dead, where I should have been dead, or I did die when I OD'd, he showed me that he had his hand on me the whole time. He wasn't going to let me go. He had a calling on my life, and he had a purpose for me being here, and it wasn't fulfilled yet, And so right after that, man, it's like the veil was rolled up, and I heard him speak, give me the reins and let me lead you to the light. And all I did was hit my knees and just surrender everything I had to Christ, because I know that he is real and he is working today, And
yes,
whenever
sir.
I surrendered my life to him, everything changed. Chains broke, and I just became free instantly, And
well, literally too, right? Like
yes.
we're sitting here right now, and you spend most of your time in a unit to where you guys don't get out much.
Right.
In the population. And so like to even see God working already, not only what he's done in those chains spiritually, but literally physically. You and I are getting to have a conversation right now. And what does that mean to you?
Man, it means everything, bro. I would never have thought that God would have chose me, a wretch like me, to come and share my story and how he is working in my life, And just the fact that I'm sitting here with no cuffs on is a testament of his goodness.
Yeah.
Because I don't deserve this. I didn't earn this. He just gave it to me. It's grace, undeserved, unmerited favor, And that's what it means to me. It means that he's still working and he's not done with me and he hasn't given up,
Yeah.
And man, I just thanking him. I love him for it,
Well, and you spoke to me a little bit earlier about just like your engagement with the Pando app, and you started naming off a lot of the pastors that are friends of mine, which tells me that you spend a lot of time on there. What does Pando app mean to you, and what's your favorite thing about it, and what it gives you on a daily basis?
Okay, well, can we just backtrack a little bit?
Yeah.
Right before? Okay.
Yeah.
So right before we got our tablet, it was about a year before we were going to get year and a half before we got our tablets. This is when I met Jesus Christ and gave him my life and made him Lord of my heart.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know what it looked like to walk in the Spirit, to live a life pleasing him, And I didn't really know what that looked like. I came from a background of Pentecostal, so I knew what that looked like, but I knew that there was more to it than that, you know? And so I started praying and seeking out God to give me wisdom and put people around me that were going to be able to cultivate me into the man he's called me to be, right? And in prison, that's kind of a hard thing to ask for, you know? We're in prison.
Yeah.
And but God's faithful, you know? I had put hope in man, you know, and that's what he showed me. I was hoping to get around godly men that were going to be able to build me up, pour into me, and shape me and mold me. And he told me, you know, sometimes man will let you down. Call unto me, and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things which you have not known. And he has. And so he wanted me to do some things, okay? I was in the middle of addiction whenever I met Jesus Christ. He met me in the middle of my addiction, alcohol, methamphetamines, and K2, you know? And he told me in porno, you know, it was bad, excuse me, but it was bad. And he told me, I want you to get rid of that. I've delivered you from it. And so I did immediately, got rid of it. He wanted me to write the organization that I was a part of and disassociate myself from them. And I did that, you know? But I knew in my own strength, I couldn't just walk away, you know? Because whenever you're in an environment like that with people, you develop bonds and friendships and, you know? And so I told him, Lord, only by your grace I'm gonna be able to walk away. Only by your grace. If this is your will, make it possible for me. And it wasn't 2 weeks later, a chaplain of ours walked up to my door out of nowhere and asked if I wanted to join the PACE program. The PACE program is a faith-based dorm that we have on 12 building, and it's just a safe haven for men to come and take some courses and grow, you know? And I was like, absolutely, I want to go. I just knew God was working right then, you know? I'm taking you out of there, I got you. And when that happened, he told me it was going to be about a year and a half before I would get moved to the program because they were in the middle of a class and things like that. And so I was like, okay. So I started just diving deep into the Word, seeking out God's truth and who He says I was. And whenever I did that, about 2 months go by, and they moved me to the program, you know. And so I was just, He was showering me with His blessings, you know, more than I could ever imagine. And so I get to the program, and you know, I'm growing. I'm going through a transformation in my life, you know, that never thought it could be possible, you know, for someone like me. And we end up getting the tablets, bro. And everything that I had been praying for, that God let me out to go to church. Let me be around the people who you calling me to be around, you know. Help me to be a minister of your word. Help me to be a wise steward with what you've given me, you know. And you know, I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know how to do none of that, you know. Well, when we got those tablets, the first thing that we were able to get was the Pando app. We couldn't get the media store, none of that, but we had the Pando app. And man, talking about living water continually. It's like a fountain that don't run dry. You can get on there 3 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the evening, whenever you need it, it's there, you know, faithfully. And I think the last time, it was like 5,000 videos on there, you know?
Yeah, I think we're even higher than that now, which is crazy.
You know, it's and it's not an app. I mean, that is in name what it is, but it's literally a move of God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? God has used that as a conduit to invade the darkness and penetrate light into it, and no one can stop it. Everybody that's got a tablet in their cell, you know, that cell's darkness. You know? And it tries to swallow us up, tries to get the best of us. But as soon as they hit that Pando app, bro, they can't escape the light, bro. Can't
speak to that darkness a little bit. Like, I mean, even I know a lot of our listeners, both in and out of prison, they experience that loneliness, isolation, which you have experienced quite a bit of. Will you speak to that and just kind of even how the light of Jesus is kind of helped you overcome some of those? Well,
before I came to Christ, before he found me, he opened my eyes, it was a dungeon, bro. Dark, deep hole that I was stuck in. I felt ostracized, isolated, but I did it all to myself. You know, there was no pity party. I made my choices, and I had to deal with the consequences, you know? But in that, once I found Christ, that dark, deep hole that I was stuck in, it immediately turned into a sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And it was like the ground became holy. God's presence was in there, and he was just loving on me, giving me everything that I was lacking outside of that cell, because we don't get much contact with people and things of that nature, Mm-hmm. When we do get to go to rec, it's usually like in a little day room that's out in the front with nobody there. So human contact is very limited. And so it's easy for us to go through like psychosis and things of that nature, being detached from society, or our culture really, And we develop our own filters of perceiving life. And that's a scary thing for a lot of people, Some people lose their minds, They don't know how to deal with the reality that they're placed in. Mm-hmm. But Jesus Christ will set the captives free, And he has proclaimed liberty. Like, today is the day of salvation. That's what he says, Mm-hmm. And so all we have to do is call out on him. Romans 10 talks about it. The word is near you. It's in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith that we preach. That if you will confess that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation, right? For whoever believes on the Lord will be saved. He wants you to believe on him. He don't want you to believe just in him. He wants you to believe on him. Put your trust and your hope in him, because he is your sure foundation, and he is our guarantee for eternal life. There is a life after this. It doesn't stop here, and he's come to give us life abundantly.
I love that, brother. I love what God's doing in your life. And I was going to even ask you that question before you just started preaching, which I absolutely love. If somebody was kind of sitting on the fence of having a relationship with God or not, what would you say to that person?
It's be the best decision you've ever made is to cry out to Jesus Christ and make him Lord of your life, because he loves you and he has a purpose for your life. You're not here for no reason. He's called you for such a time as this, and he wants you to wake to his righteousness and know who he is. You will never make a better decision in your life. Things that you never thought could happen would happen with Jesus Christ on your side. I spoke about my children.
Yep.
I have a daughter that I've never known ever. She's 14. She'll be 15 this year. Mm-hmm. Through the power of God, he gives us the ministry of reconciliation.
Yes, sir.
That's what Paul talks about,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's made us reconcilers to God. We're going around reconciling people back to God. That's what God's will for us to do is to reconcile people back to him. But my daughter grew up in a home with God absent,
Yeah.
She didn't know really God and nothing like that. And she's been tore through the mud, And God has he's opened doors to bring her into my life,
Mm-hmm.
And there ain't nothing like a daughter, bro,
Yep.
And so he reconciles families. He heals broken hearts. Whatever it is you're struggling with, he's the answer to it. There's no other answer other than Jesus Christ. Yep. He's the way, the truth, and the life, There's
I could definitely tell that he's been your strength. And since we're touching on your kids as a dad, like what's your goal currently, and the impact and the story / legacy that you want to leave for them from this point forward? Okay,
well, the goal is to cultivate a healthy relationship with both of my children. I got a son and a daughter. I want to continue to show them by example, not by instruction or preaching at them, but through example, that there's a better way to life than what this world has to offer. Mm-hmm. And the legacy that I want to leave for them is, even though this world had to offer a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot, Jesus has overcame the world, and we're in him. And when we're in him, we are overcomers. We're more than conquerors.
Yes, sir. Yep.
But I truly want to get out of prison. I want to continue to progress, to show them that God is not only working in my life, but he's working through me and touching others, That's the legacy I want to leave behind for them.
Well, I love it, bro. And I can already see that he is working in you, and just hearing you talk, like Probably one of the most powerful messages I've ever heard is just in the last 15 minutes of getting to spend time with you, and just even your passion for other people to know and experience the same thing that you've had. It reminds me of Joseph. You remind me of the story of Joseph, and what made Joseph so powerful was that all the different things that happened in his life, he carried no offense. Wow. And even while he was still incarcerated, he carried no offense. God was able to use him, and then he ultimately positions him as the second command over one of the most powerful nations in all of the world at that time. And God used him to literally restore nations and for his purposes throughout the world. And so I believe that for your life. I see it.
Thank you.
I could feel your spirit and just all the stuff that he's already doing in you. And I believe that legacy that you want to leave for your kids is ultimately what you are going to leave for your kids. And excited to meet you, man. So
I really appreciate the opportunity to meet you, man. You are a God gift, and you're doing his work, and he is going to honor you and bless you beyond means.
Well, thank you. You guys are a gift to me too. So
appreciate that.
All right, man. Thank you, bro.
Thank you, brother.
Sharing your story.
Thanks again for listening to the God Behind Bars podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll subscribe from wherever you're listening to this. Leave us a review and share with your family and friends. We're so thankful to all of those that make it possible for us to continue to reach inmates with the gospel. If you'd like to donate to support the work of God Behind Bars, you can visit godbehindbars.com/donate.